Hey YouTube, it's me BrandonColonel again. The next video that I've got for you guys is actually a pretty special video. It's on the very first custom folding knife that I've ever bought. The true first custom that I ever bought was this particular knife here, the Raymond Johnson Curly. Now, while this is a terrific knife by itself, it's still not exactly in the same kind of league as this one. And that's for reasons that I'll get into in just a bit. But one of the biggest reasons is this is I believe it's a $125 knife, and it very much shows in that. It's every bit worth the price, and it even outshows its price in a couple places. But it's still a $125 knife approximately. This, I got a steal at $7.50. This is the Darrel Dominator. Now, for anybody who's ever seen a Dominator, might already notice something a little not Dominator-like. Usually, Dominators don't have these pass-through slots here. This is actually a very particular type of Dominator that you don't see too often, called, there's actually a couple of different names that it goes by. One being the ventilator, others called the Slotinator. So it really just depends on exactly what Darrel is feeling that day to determine exactly what he calls it, but you can find it going by either name. But yeah, typically speaking, you don't see these holes in the blade, or not the blade, in the handle. Now, this is actually a one-off version that was actually made in blue shred carbon fiber. So, depending on exactly how the light catches it, you might actually see flecks of blue on the blue shred carbon fiber there. But the blue is actually made from weaving in Kevlar strands inside of the carbon fiber. So that's actually what gives it that blue coloration for various flecks. I'll see if I can get a slight close-up here. But yeah. So honestly, the fact that the entire scale right here is literally made from just pure carbon fiber, it actually makes this a fairly light knife, seeing as even the titanium itself has been milled out like this. It really makes the need for internal milling completely null and void, because you've already milled out the entire frame. I mean, even the lock bar itself has at the very least one single hole in there, on top of the fact of there being a fairly decent lock bar relief cutout. So this is heavily milled, which makes it fairly light. I mean, here, let's check the knife in my pocket. Here's the Kaiser Gemini. This is a 3-inch blade, fairly small and compact. They're about the same weight. I mean, seriously. This is a 3 3/4-inch blade, about 8.5 inches overall. This is not. But yet, these two knives are actually about the same weight. That's actually quite impressive. So, while weight doesn't exactly mean much to me personally, I mean, you've seen the Custom Knife Factory muscle on my channel. I ain't worried about weight. Weight means nothing to me. You could hand me a 4-pound knife, and I'm still going to put that thing in my back pocket and say, let's go. So, yeah, the weight doesn't mean too big of a thing to me, but it actually is quite impressive just how light this thing actually is, but yet it still feels like a tool. I mean, there are certain knives in my collection that, yeah, they're really nice, and I like to carry them a lot, but they don't feel like a tool. They feel like a bit more of a delicate, dainty little thing that I can't really use too hard. I really don't want to push it. And, like, there was one knife that I had. It was actually a ZT. ZTs are they are characteristically supposed to be overbuilt, overdone in every way, shape, fashion, and form. It's supposed to feel like a tool. The 0770 CF? No, it did not feel like a tool. It felt like a small, gentleman-style knife that you put it up to cardboard that was too thick, and it felt like it would just capsize. And that was supposed to be a big, beefy, overbuilt ZT. So I really like the fact of how light this is, but how it really still feels like a tool. That I could take this thing off to battle, plunge it through some cargo hold, and feel like it's actually going to stay intact. Beat up? No, heck yeah. But I feel like it might actually stay intact if I were to do something like that. So it's actually really cool. Let's see. As far as the overall specs, I believe that the handle was about 4 3/4 inches. The blade, as I already stated, was 3 3/4 inches. I think that the overall was about somewhere between 8.5 and 8 3/4 inches. I don't know the exact measurement on that one, but it was somewhere roughly between those two. Almost took my thumb off there. This is a very, very smooth, free-falling knife. It takes no effort to close this thing whatsoever. Pretty much once this thing breaks past the detent, get your thumb out of the way, because this thing's coming down. I actually did get this thing secondhand, so it is quite impressive just how well this thing has held up. This knife was specifically made about 1.5 years ago for, I think it was the TKI knife show. And when I was at Blade Show, then the guy who initially bought it actually sold it to me there directly. And so I was able to buy this very knife at Blade Show, which was a TKI knife exclusive. Well, not exclusive, because I don't really know what to call it, but it was made for that show by Darrel. And, but yeah, so I bought it off of the initial owner. Now, things that I really, really love about this knife. As you've seen, I've probably gotten to my 100th flip already, just in this video. The action is phenomenal. It is absolutely superb. This is probably the closest thing to a perfect detent that I have ever found. You really can't find a way to get this thing to misfire. If you want to tighten up the action at all, instead of keeping your fingers back here, well, that's actually one of the first times that I've ever even got to halfway misfire and it's still open. But just to get your fingers back here, and it still has a nice and hard detent. But if you want just a slightly harder detent, actually grab onto the lock bar just a bit, which this thing is immensely big enough to be able to do and still have some room. And then it makes the detent completely perfect. Grab just a little bit harder, and it almost is finger breaking. But still, it is pretty much the perfect flipping action for me. Now, just overall, this knife is incredibly comfortable. It's not the most comfortable knife that I've ever handled, but it's pretty daggone close, actually. I'd have to say that this is maybe second or third prize for comfort in hand. The pocket clip just disappears. With how low profile it is, it really just simply disappears in your hand. There is no hot spots whatsoever here. So absolutely no complaints on the pocket clip. Overall, probably the only relative gripe that I would have in ergonomics is that right here is just a little hot as far as a hot spot would go, and it's only on this one finger. So really, kudos to Darrel. He did a really good job on this knife overall. It is very comfortable in hand. When you're cutting with it for hours on end, your hand kind of just melts into the correct position, and it really doesn't move from it after that, and it's just a joy to cut with, honestly. So it really, really is nice. The finishing on the blade is probably one of the only things that I'd change as far as looks-wise, but it's just due to the fact of I really don't like stonewash all that much. And so, personally speaking, what he calls the battle-worn finish, which is kind of like an acid etch right here on the primary grind, and also up here on the top swedge, the dark acid etch really doesn't do much for me, and the fact that it's stonewashed after that, I don't like stonewash to begin with, personally. Just about every single knife that I own is stonewashed. The Kaiser Gemini is stonewashed. No, that's actually not stonewashed there. My ZT-0801, stonewashed. Pretty much every ZT that I have has been stonewashed. Riyadh, stonewashed. My Jason Browse Dustin Turpin Strife, stonewashed. Everything is stonewashed. I couldn't care less for stonewash. I hate it. It is the cheap and easy way to get out of doing something better. So I really don't care for stonewash. But at the very least, this is different with the fact of it being a battle-worn finish of at least having an acid etch first. So it doesn't look like just your average, everyday, run-of-the-mill stonewash or anything like that, but I still don't care for it. So that would be the only thing that I would change. But otherwise, the satin finish on the flats is absolutely phenomenal. I would actually like to have that finish on the entire knife. And then I'd say this would pretty much be the perfect knife. It is just breathtaking, the satin finish on there. This was, I actually was able to talk to Darrel himself, and he was able to let me know that the finish work on here was actually initially done by a belt. So he got it started off with a belt finish, but then for the finishing touches, he actually did a hand rub satin finish to finish it up. But yeah, it was initially a belt satin. Now, something that I really haven't seen before is the same finishing on the titanium. So I don't know just how well this is going to be coming up here on camera, but this is actually I'm pretty sure this was also a hand rub satin for the titanium. And that is a finish that I have never seen before, not on a titanium frame. So that is actually really cool. And it's finished all the way around. The edges are actually polished. This is actually something that I just noticed now, but the edges are actually polished even more so than the flats here are. So that's actually really cool. And the inside of these holes have actually been chamfered a little bit, so that way it just gives it a little bit more dimensionality. So that's actually pretty cool. The pivot is pretty much just your standard Torx, but it is a custom designed pivot. It's got a lot of design work around it. Kind of gives me like a 4-leaf clover impression kind of thing. Now, I do believe that this was from the original owner, and that it wasn't really a design aesthetic. But if just in case you can't see very well, I don't believe that the darkness on the inside of the pivot milling there, I don't believe that was a part of a battle-worn finish. I think that's actually just a bit of rust from the original owner's mishandling. So I've tried to take a bit of sandpaper at about 2,000 grit and try to take it out of there, but I've been so far unsuccessful at completely removing it. Because it just looked like rust. And one of the things that made me originally think that was the fact of when I first opened up this knife to clean it, it looked like the original owner literally dropped it in a swamp for a couple of days and just let it stew. Because there was so much gunk and crap in here. No doubt he'd probably oiled it probably every single day in the pivot, and then carried around for God knows how long, with pockets that probably hadn't seen a dryer, or not a dryer, but that hadn't seen a washer in probably about the past 4 years. Because there was so much caked on oil and lube and pocket lint on the inside of this pivot. I'm actually surprised that it had as good of an action as it did when I first handled it. I was actually surprised, pleasantly so, but I was actually surprised at the action when I first got it, saying, wow, this is actually really good. I like this action. It's nice. Then I open it up, nearly have a heart attack at seeing just how poorly maintained this excellent knife is. Or this excellent knife was, I should say. And so I clean it out, re-lube it, get it put back together properly, and then literally the first time that I drop it down, I cut myself. I mean, that fast. Because I'd gotten used to just how well it was handling previously, that the moment that I released that lock bar, then it just dropped smooth. And I mean, this is about 2 months after the first amount of lube that I've put on it has actually worn off slightly. So this actually isn't even as fast of a dropper as when I first put the lube on. Because, like I said, I haven't lubed it in 2 months. And it's still going this fast. Just imagine how fast it was dropping fresh with lube. So, yeah, I got bit literally upon putting it back together. And, so needless to say, I am thoroughly impressed with this action. But yeah, so due to the very, very poor mishandling and miscare of this knife, I have no doubt that that's actually rust on the pivot there. But yeah, so obviously the hardware is not titanium on here. You do, if you ever come up for a build with Darrel, then I believe that you actually do have an option for titanium screws, and you can actually separate out the pivot, so that way you could just get the pivot in titanium if you choose to. But you can get the body screws in titanium if I'm not mistaken. He does have the ordering books where you can pretty much make your dream knife, and it's actually pretty cool. But you do have to make sure that it's on a run that he's currently making. Right now, I don't think that he's actually doing a Dominator series right now, but I do believe that that he's doing the Moab and one other knife. I don't remember what it is, but he's doing the Moab and some other blade, and you can currently get builds for those. I don't know how long out they are, so don't ask me about that. But I do believe that he currently is making that batch of knives. Now let's see. Right here you will see the marking V3. Basically what that means is version 3. Right now I think he's on version 4. Particularly of the Dominator series. He's on version 4. I don't know exactly what kind of modifications or updates or upgrades that would actually entail, but I do know that he is currently on version 4. So let's see, what else? The jimping on here is pretty much perfect. I wouldn't change anything whatsoever about that jimping. The jimping on the flipper tab is, of course, just excellent. It allows you a really, really nice and secure purchase on that flipper tab. You really don't miss it. The only thing about the finger choil here is it's not quite big enough. I do believe that if you specifically message him and ask him to make it a bit bigger, so that way you can completely fit your finger in without a problem, I do believe you will. In the future, I might probably just take a small file and dehorn that just a little bit, so that way I can completely get my finger in there without a problem. But seeing as it's just that easy for me, it's no more than just simply filing it down slightly, because it really does work, but I've got to be careful, because this is a scary, stupid sharp knife. I mean, here's just my standard no grip test. Yeah. This is stupid sharp. Now, yes, seeing as it's been owned, this is not from Darrel sharp, so I really have no clue exactly what his type of edge looks like. But honestly, a lot of the way that a knife cuts does have to do with the initial edge geometry. So, sure, I can make an asymmetrical grind cut like butter. That's no problem. I can do it. But at the same time, you do notice a difference with something just so perfectly symmetrical as this. So it is a really, really nice grind, and it allows for just a stupid sharp edge geometry. So yeah, this is absolutely phenomenal. Let's see. Now, as far as actual gripes about the knife, there are only two. The only two complaints, and true complaints, that I have, first of all, is the fact of this knife does use red Loctite. So, a couple of the pieces on here are red Loctited. The only things that I couldn't remove was the pocket clip. Now, the reason why that does kind of irk me a little bit is because it means that I couldn't fix the second problem. Because I would have simply fixed the second problem myself if I could fix the red Loctite on the pocket clip. Now, here's what happened. You put this in various types of pockets. Now you can't get it out. Reason being, right here. It ain't the pocket clip. It's a lock bar relief. You probably won't be able to notice anything specific about it, but because of just how sharp of an angle that is, and also a bit of how deep it goes, basically speaking, there's it really makes it for the knife to just catch in your pocket, because now it doesn't want to go anywhere. This needs to be rounded off a bit. And also, one thing that doesn't help it at all is the fact of right here, there's no bar there. Being the ventilator model, then with all of this milling, honestly, there should have been, even no matter how slight it was, there should have been that little bar right there in order to prevent your jeans or whatever pants you're wearing from catching right here and just not allowing you to remove the knife. So that is the only gripe that I have. Now, if I was able to remove this pocket clip, then I'd be able to dehorn that a little bit and just completely round it off, so that way this doesn't happen again. However, because I couldn't remove the pocket clip and I couldn't dehorn anything, then it really does mean that there are just certain pants I can't wear this with. So, and as far as my work pants, that's really a guessing game, because there are certain work pants, and all of my work pants are just your standard, average, run-of-the-mill khaki pants. They're identical to each other. But for whatever reason, some of them either have a bigger lip, I don't know, but some of my work pants I just cannot wear this thing with, because I can't get it out of my pocket in less than 30 seconds. Because I literally start pulling on it, realize, holy crap, I can't get this thing out, and for the next 15 to 30 seconds, I'm literally just tugging on it until finally I take a second hand, just about break my spine trying to turn around to my back pocket, pinch the pocket together, and then pull it out. Literally, that's what it takes in order to get this out of certain pants. The pair of pants that I wear most often, out of my set of jeans, I've literally just simply cut off part of the lip, and then I sewed the rest of it down, so that way I don't even have to worry about that lip anymore, and I can just simply put my put the knife in like usual, and then I can draw it out easily. But I literally had to cut out from my jeans the lip from the pocket, just so that way I could carry this thing. That's really annoying. And that is the only true 100% gripe about this entire knife. Honestly, had I known it before I bought it, I probably wouldn't have bought it. Now, I'm very, very happy that I did buy it. And if given the opportunity, I probably would have done it again. But on the spot, when I realized that there was the possibility of a Reat K1 for $100 cheaper, that had a Mokutai inlay and just a beautiful hand rub satin blade, I just about went with that. And like I said, for $100 cheaper, yeah, there's a reason why I would have gone with that, had I known about the issue of the pocket clip. But like I said, I am very, very happy that I actually went with this knife because of just how amazing it actually is. So, beyond those two complaints, I really can't complain about anything. The only some of the only other downsides that I wouldn't really consider gripes or complaints is being the ventilator model. Then it does mean that say you've got a little bit of excess moisture on your hands, or your hands are truly wet, then the way that moisture will actually be able to seep through these holes means that, for whatever reason, somehow, your blade ends up getting soaked, well, not really soaked, but wet a lot easier. There's actually been a couple of times that I was sweating pretty hard at work, and then I pull out my knife, open it up, and the blade's wet. And I kind of just look at it thinking, how in the world did it get wet? I literally haven't even pulled my knife out all day. But then I realize I've been sweating all day, and it being the ventilator model, this side is right up next to my body, so sweat clean through, and then these holes allow moisture to come in and cling to the blade. At which point I flick it out and realize, holy crap, it's wet. Now I've got to wipe it off, clean it a little bit, and make sure that it's completely clean before I use it to cut various things that I may be cutting. So that's not exactly my favorite thing, but not enough for me to say it's truly a gripe. It's just, meh, I don't really care for that. Next is something that I'll have to keep in mind for maintenance issues, is if you see on the titanium side, there's actually a bit of a collar right there that goes around the washer set for the bearings, and it does a pretty nice job of actually covering up the pivot. However, on the carbon fiber side, no such thing exists. So the washer for the caged bearings is actually pretty decently exposed. So it really does nothing to cover that up, and so that means that the carbon fiber side for the bearings, it's going to be a bit more of a lint trap. So I'm not too keen on that, but again, it just means that I'm going to have to take it apart a little bit more and do everything that I can to ensure that it doesn't get nearly as bad as the last owner. Now, granted, the last owner, it was gunked up on both sides. It was disgusting. Like I said, it looked like he let it simmer in a swamp for a couple of days. It was that bad. So, Lord knows I won't let it get that bad. I mean, for crying out loud, I barely even let my knives go 3 months without cleaning it out. So, I'm actually probably going to be taking it apart sometime in the next month or two. But yeah, so this thing will be seeing maintenance soon, just as my general run-of-the-mill maintenance goes. But beyond that, it probably shouldn't need it all that much. But I wouldn't be surprised to find out that there is a significant amount of buildup on the carbon fiber show side. That actually should be about it. The only thing that I didn't mention was that it does have a pretty good lock bar insert there. One of the things that I actually do like about the lock bar insert itself is the fact that, if you can see, these aren't actually pins. It's actually been screwed from the inside. My camera does not want to focus for the life of me. But yeah, I think that you can probably see the screws there. But yeah, so what these are is just the bottoms of the screws. And it's actually been nicely polished and rounded off a bit even, so it's not even just flat, but it's actually somewhat rounded. And so you don't have just two ugly screw holes right there, which some knives do. So it's actually pretty cool. I like that. Okay, well, I think I'm going to cut it off right here. So yeah, this is the Darrel Ralph Dominator, Slotinator, Ventilator, whichever one you want to call it. I'm going to call it the Slotinator because that's the first thing that I saw. So, this is the... I really can't believe that I'm actually going to have to do this, but my camera actually cut me off seconds before I do my closing. So, at the end of the video, as always, YouTube, stay safe.